All right, everybody, peace. Welcome to the Sorry to Bother You College Football Show. Wherever or however listening, we're so grateful to have you here with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle, and we've got a jam-packed show for today, guys. We're going to be previewing some of the biggest matchups in college football this week, including the Red River Rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma, the titled matchup between Ole Miss and LSU coming out of the SEC, and we got a big Big Ten matchup between USC and Penn State. And guys, we're going to be covering all of this and then some. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right into it. But before we get started, if you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content that we post daily. And if you'd like to gain exclusive content from the Sorry to Bother You Show, be sure to follow us on Patreon. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Sorry to Bother You Show. That way you gain access to all of our exclusive content that we post daily. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/sorrytobotheryouLLC/tip. None of this is possible without you guys as fans. So we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you guys continue to show us day in and day out. So with that being said, guys, let's go and get right into it, shall we? Like I said, big Red River Rivalry matchup this week between number 1 Texas and number 18 now, Oklahoma. Listen, it's no longer the Big 12, but it's the SEC, but it's still a big matchup between these two teams. As you guys know, Texas just moved up to number 1 this week. They're 5-0, 1-0 in the SEC. Oklahoma 4-1 on the year, 1-1 in the conference. Texas coming off a big win against Mississippi State, winning 35-13, while Oklahoma's coming off a nail-biting performance against Auburn, in which they won 27-21. Oklahoma's only loss in the season right so far is against Tennessee, in which they lost 25-15. And we talked about in that game where Oklahoma wasn't able to get into a rhythm offensively, but defensively did a great job of limiting Tennessee's high-powered, highly potent offense. However, Oklahoma just couldn't get into a rhythm offensively, and that has been the issue or cause for concern for Oklahoma throughout the season so far. And Texas, we know, has looked like the number 1 team in the country all year. We saw what they did to Colorado State. We saw what they did to Michigan, and like I said last week, we saw what they did to Mississippi State. I do believe that this game against Oklahoma will be Texas' toughest task so far on the year, and this is going to be a good indicator of how good Texas is, and just how much there's of a separator, or how much of a divide there is between Texas and Georgia and Alabama. So I talked about ad nauseum on this show about how Texas has been the best team in college football so far, with 6 weeks into the season, and that was with their performances against marginal opponents. And so going up against a highly touted SEC opponent in Oklahoma will be a good indicator for Texas to see how good they are and how they perform against highly physical defenses. Michigan is probably the most physical team that Texas has faced so far, but we know that Michigan is susceptible to highly potent offenses, and Michigan is not what they were last year. You saw what happened to them against Washington. But Oklahoma will be a more apropos way of discerning just how good Texas is this season. And if we look up matchup predictor, Texas has an 85% chance of winning this game compared to 15% for Oklahoma. And the line and spread is currently set at -15 for Texas, and the over/under is currently at 50. So matchup predictor thinks that this is going to be a highly explosive game for Texas. And I'm excited to see Oklahoma's defense against this highly powered Texas offense. And I've seen enough from this Oklahoma defense for me to say that Oklahoma has one of the best defenses in the country. In the country. I mean, listen, Oklahoma is allowing 16 points per game, which is good for 19th in the country. And they're for their defensive stats, they're only allowing 340 total yards of offense per game, which is phenomenal. And like I said, this is a defense that Texas hasn't faced all year, and this would be a great opportunity to see how good Texas is. And I do believe Texas, like I said, is the best team in college football right now. Led by their offense, and specifically Isaiah Bond, Alabama transfer, who has 20 receptions, 364 yards, 3 touchdowns on the year. And we know what Texas offense is capable of doing. They're averaging 322 passing yards per game, which is good for 10th in the country. They're averaging 191 yards per game on the ground, which is good for 39th. And they're averaging 45 points per game, which is good for 7th in the country. And speaking of defenses, Texas defense is only allowing 7 points per game, which is good for 2nd in the country. Albeit Texas has not had as difficult as a schedule, I'd say, for in comparison to Oklahoma. And I say that because I don't believe Michigan is as good as we thought they were. And like I said, Mississippi State is a great SEC opponent, but I think Auburn's better than Mississippi State, and obviously Tennessee is better than Mississippi State as well. So the big question is going to be: is Texas going to be able to continue to be explosive in the passing attack? Huge indicator of that is who's going to be under center. Is it going to be Arch Manning, or is it going to be Quinn Ewers? I think Quinn goes back into the starting lineup. I'm not entirely sure about his health. I believe he's scheduled to play this game. And our host, Dre Pennington, he is going with Texas as well. OU seems shaky, especially after the Auburn scare. Dre, I agree with you. And, I'm sure we'll talk about this on our live show on Thursday or Friday. Oklahoma is susceptible to if anything on defense, and Oklahoma is susceptible to the deep ball. We know how great they are at stopping the run. And we saw that, like Dre said, against Auburn. And I believe that Texas, especially if Quinn Ewers is back in the lineup, is going to do a good job of utilizing play action and throwing the ball outside the numbers downfield. I'm not sure if Oklahoma is going to go into a dime package for most of this game, just to counteract or balance out the 3-man split formation that Texas normally runs. I can see Oklahoma doing that because their front seven is already pretty good, so I can see them just adding another man to the secondary. But I do think this game will be close in the first half, and I do think Texas will pull away towards the end of the game. About the beginning of the fourth quarter, it's when Texas will start to pull away. But that's because Oklahoma's offense is just too inconsistent from what I've seen so far. They don't do a great job of having long extended drives, which is unfortunate because now the Oklahoma defense has to be on the field longer, and they get tired, they get worn out, and which is what happened with Auburn. They had so many possessions on the field, the defense did, and allowed Auburn to make a comeback and make the game close. And I believe that's going to happen as well in this game. Oklahoma won't be able to get into a rhythm offensively or create any consistency. And so, over the course of the game, that starts to wear down on the Oklahoma defense. And then that allows big plays to open up for Texas, particularly in the secondary. So right now I have Texas winning this game by a score of 35-18. And I think Texas once again proves that they are the best team in the in the country. And I know this is obviously a Red River Rivalry, one of the best rivalries in college football. However, I don't believe this matchup, this iteration, is going to have the same flair and the same spectacle that its previous iterations have. But me and Dre both have Texas winning this game. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section. What do you guys think about this matchup? Do you guys have Oklahoma pulling off the upset, or do you guys have Texas beating Oklahoma? Leave your thoughts in the comment section. But in our next segment, guys, we're going to be talking about another interesting matchup between some Big Ten opponents. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed the first segment of our show, we were previewing the matchup between Texas and Oklahoma, the Red River Rivalry, and we discussed why this iteration of the matchup won't be as exciting, won't have the same amount of flair that its previous iterations have. And in this segment, guys, we're going to be previewing a Big Ten matchup between some highly physical Big Ten teams. And yeah, shout out to my boy Cam. Love you, bro. Thank you for hopping on the show. But like I said, very highly touted Big Ten matchup between number 4 Penn State and now unranked USC. And listen, we talked about Penn State quite a bit this season. Talked about how James Franklin has this team prepped and ready, especially on the offensive end, to make a run for the Big Ten championship. I believe Penn State is the second best team in the Big Ten, right behind Ohio State. But I think that there's not much space between those two teams. I believe that Penn State can make a legitimate run at being the best team in the Big Ten. And USC, obviously 3-2 on the season, 1-2 in the conference, having this hard time struggling or adjusting to the physicality of the Big Ten. And it's just funny how quickly the tide and the energy in the program can shift, and also how quickly perception can shift based upon the media. Because right after USC defeated LSU in the beginning of the season, people were saying that Lincoln Riley and his job at USC was no longer in question. He just earned himself a 2-year extension based on his win against LSU. But now USC is 3-2, 1-2 in the conference. They just got upset against Minnesota, no longer in the top 25. Now people once again are starting to question the safety of Lincoln Riley's job security and whether he should be on the hot seat. And I'll be interested to hear Dre's perspective on what he thinks about Lincoln Riley and what he thinks about his job security and whether USC should fire Lincoln Riley at the end of the season. And obviously with Penn State, one of the best defenses in the country, and the thing that separates this iteration of Penn State from previous Penn State opponent or Penn State teams is the offense. His offense. Listen, Aller for Penn State already has 1,000 yards in the season, has 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. Their rushing attack is led by Singleton, who has 53 carries, 408 yards, 3 touchdowns. And if we look at the numbers real quick for Penn State, they're averaging 244 passing yards per game, which is good for 57th in the country. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's quite formidable compared to its previous offenses at Penn State. And they're averaging 217 rushing yards per game, which is good for 18th in the country. Averaging 34 points per game, which is good for 34th. And obviously we know how great the defense is. Only allowing 11 points per game, which is good for 11th in the country. Good for 8th in the country. And the big thing we just saw right there was the 217 yards per game on the ground. That allows Penn State to obviously control time of possession. It allows them to extend drives and extend the time that the defense is on the sideline, which allows them to rest more and to catch their breath. And that's why every time the defense for Penn State comes on the field, they look rejuvenated, they look fresh, and so they're able to be more consistent and be more effective when they are on the field. And listen, Penn State's coming off a 27-11 victory against UCLA. While, like I said, USC is coming off upset against Minnesota, in which they lost 24-17. And listen, Penn State's best victory so far this year is against UCLA, while USC's best victory, like I said, is against LSU, which was to open out the season. And see, some people will argue that Penn State hasn't played anyone yet. They haven't played anyone of stature, so the numbers are a bit inflated for them. And some people will say that USC has had a tough schedule, and so they've struggled to get into a rhythm because they face the gauntlet. And I think two things can be true at the same time. Yes, Penn State has not had the toughest of schedules, but the film doesn't lie. The numbers don't lie. We talked about with Tennessee, for example, how, yes, they have not had the toughest of schedules, but we still see that the offense for Tennessee can still be proficient and quite explosive, no matter who they're playing against. Though they did lose to Arkansas, that team was still able to move the ball quite a bit. Same thing with Penn State. Yes, they haven't played anyone of stature, but listen, the defense still looks potent, still looks physical. They do a great job of stopping the run, and the offense still looks commendable, especially when they can get into a rhythm running the ground, because that on the ground game, because now that opens up the play action. And if we look at Matchup Predictor, listen, Matchup Predictor actually has USC with a 51% chance of winning this game, and the spread is currently for Penn State -5, and the over/under is currently set at 50, which means that as we get closer to the to Saturday, it's probably going to become a pick'em game in all likelihood. And listen, the game is a home game for USC, but I have Penn State winning this game. I have Penn State winning this game by a score of 27-23. I think Penn State's legitimate. I think Penn State's one of the best teams, like I said, in the Big Ten, and I do believe that this performance is going to show people why Penn State is one of the best teams in the Big Ten. And the only reason I believe USC is going to be able to score 23 points this game is because of the reshift in focus from their matchup against Minnesota. Like I said, watching that Minnesota game, USC looked out of sorts. They looked unfocused, unmotivated, and I believe that's going to allow that performance they had against Minnesota is going to galvanize them to put up a stronger performance against Penn State. However, it will not be enough because Penn State is that much more dominant of a team. And, Michigan and Penn State are two teams that are built quite similarly. However, Penn State is a highly more potent offense than Michigan has. So actually, though I have Penn State winning this game by a score of 27-23, I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State's able to get into the 30s offensively. Through their ability to run the ball and control time possession, and running the ball is something, or stopping the rushing attack is something that USC has not done a good job of all year, though their secondary has been great. So like I said, I have Penn State winning this game by a score of 27-23. But let me know what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'd love to hear all about it. And in our next segment, guys, we're going to be previewing a very, very interesting SEC matchup. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back. Alright, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed our previous segment, we previewed a very interesting Big Ten matchup between Penn State and USC. And in this segment, guys, actually, we're going to preview, like I said, we're going to preview a very interesting SEC matchup between number 9, Ole Miss, and number 13, LSU. Listen, 2 weeks ago, this matchup could have been a potential matchup between two of the 4 best teams in the SEC. However, I don't think that's the case anymore. Though both teams are extremely talented, very good. Both teams have had underwhelming losses, I'd say. Obviously, Ole Miss lost 2 weeks ago to Kentucky by a score of 2017, a game in which they looked unfocused and lackluster and, quite frankly, out of sorts. And for LSU, obviously, their opening matchup against USC, which, in all honesty, as the season goes along, that loss starts to look worse and worse for LSU, especially seeing how USC has performed or has been performing since their victory against LSU. And I will say this, to Ole Miss's credit, Ole Miss's loss to Kentucky begins to look better and better as the season goes along, because Kentucky, to me, is looking like a team that's extremely physical, a team that can stop the run. However, what Kentucky lacks is obviously a potent offense. And, actually Kentucky faces the same issues, same problems that a Michigan is facing. So if those teams were to face off, that'd be a very interesting matchup right there, talking about Michigan and Kentucky. But these two teams right here, Ole Miss and LSU, listen, two teams that are highly explosive offensively. We already know what Ole Miss is able to do offensively, led by Jackson Dart. And LSU is another team that has shown the propensity to be efficient on the offensive side of the ball. And, if we see what LSU has been able to do, last week they beat South Alabama by a score of 42-10. Week before that, they defeated UCLA by a score of 34-17. Week before that, they had a nail-biter against South Carolina, which they won 36-33, game in which they probably should have lost. But that's neither here nor there. And obviously, Ole Miss defeated South Carolina last week by a score of 27-3. So these teams are pretty evenly matched. We know that Jackson Dart has the potential to be a Heisman candidate. For Ole Miss, he has 2,100 yards already with 13 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. But, if we look at Nussmeier's stats, though his play doesn't pop off the screen, he does have 1,600 yards with 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So he's definitely starting to get into a rhythm, which is helping that LSU offense. And if we look at matchup predictor, Ole Miss currently has a 67% chance of winning this game compared to 32% for LSU. And if we look at the spread's currently set at minus 3.5 for Ole Miss, and the over-under is currently set at 63.5. So it looks like this is going to be a high-scoring game, and I believe that will be the case. I have concerns for LSU's secondary. And I do believe that Ole Miss will do a good job of throwing the deep ball, especially with Parrish, who has 570 yards, with Harris, my apologies, has 52 receptions, 885 yards, 5 touchdowns. And I think that Ole Miss struggles with stopping the run. And running the ball is something that LSU has done a good job of. and I do believe both teams will be able to get into a rhythm offensively. And for this game, it's going to come down to who's able to get a stop first. So I do believe this game is going to be a high scoring game in the into high to mid 30s, almost similar to how it was last year. And it's going to come down to who's going to be able to get a stop first. And due to the potency of Ole Miss's offense, I can see Ole Miss jumping out to an early lead with LSU coming back, regaining the lead, and then Ole Miss getting a late stop in the end of the game. I do believe this game will be back and forth, a back and forth matchup, and I have Ole Miss winning this game right now. I have Ole Miss winning this game by a score of 37-34. I do believe this game will be a close game, highly explosive offensive matchup between these two teams. Not a lot of defense in this matchup, for sure. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Do you guys think this is going to be a close matchup? Do you guys think this is going to be a highly touted offensive matchup, or do you think the defense will show up for both of these teams and make a statement with the performance that has yet to be seen from either of these defenses? And I haven't seen much from either of these defenses over the course of the year so far, and nothing that I've seen has shown me or tells me that will be any different in this matchup. If anything, it'll be worse, because for both these defenses, this will be the most explosive and potent offense that they face, and I'm not sure if they'll be prepared for that, both of these teams. But the Ole Miss is just a bit more talented than LSU at this point, and that's going to allow them to squeak out this victory by a score of 37-34, like I said. So I have Ole Miss winning this game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Do you guys have Ole Miss winning this game, or do you guys have LSU pulling off the upset? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. I'd love to hear all about it. And in our next segment, guys, we're going to be previewing perhaps the game of the week, which is another Big Ten matchup. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You're not going to miss it. We will be right back. Alright, everybody, welcome back. In case you missed our previous segment of the show, we previewed a highly touted SEC matchup between Ole Miss and LSU, and I talked about why that game is going to be a highly explosive offensive performance for both of these teams, because the defense is almost non-existent for both of these clubs. But in this segment, guys, we're going to be previewing perhaps the game of the week, which is another Big Ten matchup between number 2 Ohio State and number 3 Oregon. Still a bit strange to me to consider this a Big Ten matchup with obviously Oregon's transition to the Big Ten. However, Ohio State is a team that has flown under the radar for much of this season, mostly because the SEC gets extreme bias by ESPN, which is something that no one's talking about, and I'm sure other people have noticed it, but this was my biggest concern for ESPN gaining the television rights for SEC football games. Was this right here? And the SEC has become ESPN's darling, their child, their favorite child, and it just always, it shows me that everything ties back, reverberates back to money and the financial gain. If ESPN does a great job of promoting SEC teams and how great they are within, especially with teams in the top 25 and the top 10, it creates more of an allure and of a desire to watch these teams. And so when you get these SEC matchups on ESPN, you get more of a turnout in terms of viewership, because people want to watch these teams play because it's all they hear about all week. But the fact that ESPN said earlier this week that Ohio State's 35-7 victory over Iowa was a lackluster performance shows me all I need to know about how ESPN is unabashed with their preference and favoritism towards the SEC. And if I'm noticing that, best believe that other programs, other teams that are not in the SEC are noticing that and are going to take that to task, and it's going to be used as bulletin board material, and it's going to be used to galvanize teams outside of the SEC, specifically Ohio State. Listen, outside of Texas, Ohio State has been the most consistent team in college football. And like I said, Ohio State is the best team in the Big Ten, though Penn State is a close second. So I do believe Penn State's better than Oregon. Oregon is another team that's flown under the radar, but I will say that Oregon has not had the toughest of schedules. They defeated Michigan State by a score of 31-10 last week, defeated UCLA by a score of 34-13, defeated Oregon State by a score of 49-14, had a close match against Boise State against 37, by winning by a score of 37-34. By the way, that victory for Oregon against Boise State continues to look better as the weeks progress, because Boise State has shown themselves to be a highly proficient and touted offensive team. And Ohio State, they defeated Iowa, like I said, 35-7, defeated Michigan State 38-17 the week before that, and they defeated Marshall 49-14 the week before that. So yes, Ohio State has not had the toughest of schedules, but once again, the film speaks for itself. That offense led by those freshmen and underclassmen at Ohio State looks highly touted, and it looks like they're primed to make a run at the Big Ten. And if we look at matchup predictor, Ohio State has a 64% chance of winning this game compared to 35% for Oregon. The over-under is currently set at 53. The spread currently is set for Ohio State -3. And I do believe this game. I do believe this game is going to be more physical than people expect, obviously, because it's the Big Ten, and Oregon has done a good job of transitioning to the Big Ten. They have a very physical front seven, and Ohio State has a good front seven, but their secondary is great as well, probably the best part of their defense. And I won't be surprised if this game ends up being a low-scoring affair between these two teams. Look for both teams to establish the run early, especially Oregon, led by Dylan Gabriel. And, I believe I have Ohio State winning this game by a score of 27-24. I do believe this game will be a low-scoring affair compared to what people expect the score to be. But I do believe Ohio State is going to do a good job controlling or limiting, the explosive plays, the downfield plays for Oregon. And something that Oregon does well, they do a good job of running outside the tackle box on those sweeps and those zone plays and the counters. But Ohio State has their defense does a good job of moving laterally, and I believe that they're going to do a job of stopping those type of runs for Oregon, which is going to force Dylan Gabriel and Oregon to throw the ball downfield outside the numbers or on those crossing routes. And I'm not sure if that would be enough to stop this Ohio State team. I don't believe it will. And like I said, I have Ohio State winning this game by a score 27-24. But I won't be surprised if these two teams meet again later on in the season, and perhaps in the Big Ten championship game. But for right now, I do believe that Ohio State will win this game by a score 27-24. And like I said, this is just going to solidify for me that Ohio State has been one of the most consistent teams in the country. They're the best team in the Big Ten, and that they are a team that people need to be aware of, and that it should be talked more about. And it's unfortunate because no matter how good a team is from the Big 12, no matter how good a team is from the ACC, like at Miami, no matter how good a team is from the Big Ten, like Ohio State or a Penn State, they're just not going to get the same attention, the same press coverage that teams from the SEC will. And this is the beginning of the preferential treatment for SEC and ESPN. And this is why I was hoping that CBS would retain the rights for the SEC football because of this right here. And don't be surprised if this has an impact on the college football playoff and the rankings. Obviously, we just heard the news that the Big Ten and SEC board of athletic directors, they just met for a conference to discuss the potential of each of those conferences having 4 automatic bids to the college football playoff. Imagine that. The same food that you wished for is now going to kill you for everyone that wanted a 12-team playoff. Told you I was not a proponent of this. All roads lead back to the money trail. And this is what happens. This is what happens when you mix money with it's entertainment at the end of the day, so it's always going to be about the money. However, you wanted more parity, you wanted more teams, but now more teams need to get paid, more pockets need to be filled, and this is what happens when you expand it to a 12-team playoff format. But I digress. I have Ohio State winning this game by a score of 27-24. Leave your thoughts in the comment section, though. I'd love to hear all about it, guys. With that being said, that's it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful show. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content. And if you'd like to gain exclusive content from the Sorry to Bother You Show, you can do so by following us on Patreon. And if you'd like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/sorrytobotheryouLLC/tip. None of this is possible if you guys are fans. So we're so grateful and honored for all the love and support that you guys continue to show us day in and day out. We'll be back again, guys, same time tomorrow with our NFL show. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. But with that being said, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and